It feels like Notre Dame's season is on the line with Texas A&M coming to town, and Irish fans have plenty of questions. It's time for the Friday Mailbag, and we're answering everything you need to know heading into a massive Saturday night showdown in Notre Dame Stadium.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. Today is Friday, September 12th, so happy Friday to you, and thanks for getting your game weekend started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, before we dive in, please make sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. I also wanted to give a huge thank you to everyone who sent in questions for this week's mailbag. You guys delivered with some great ones. We're going to try to run through them all as quickly as I can so that way we can squeeze them all in. But we're going to kick things off with the big picture stakes for Saturday night, from the team's sense of urgency to why the Irish can take down Texas A&M and how Mike Elko plans to defend Jeremiyah Love. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, some schematic tweaks, Bryce Young's versatility on the defensive line, and which player from last year's roster would help the most right now. And finally, we're going to wrap it up with some off-the-field fun, the AP poll controversy, A&M's traveling fan base, and what to expect from the first Notre Dame home game with public alcohol sales. It's going to be a great one, so buckle up. But we begin with a two-parter. So these two questions are kind of related in the way that I'm going to answer them. So this first one is from @Tegan0G, who wants to know, what is the single biggest reason why you believe Notre Dame will win this game against Texas A&M? And then @RyanWilming6615, he asks, do you think this team is playing with enough urgency? Against Miami, they seem too relaxed, and Freeman's, quote, we just want to reach our full potential, end quote, comment seems too laid back. One thing is clear. They did not play with enough urgency against Miami out of the gate. They really did not pick things up until they were down 14 points, and that's unacceptable. Like the fact that Miami opened up the second half and just pushed Notre Dame around and drove right down the field to go up 21-7 absolutely cannot happen. They have to have They have to have a much greater sense of urgency coming out of the half, especially considering they're down. But I was disappointed with the way that they started the season as well. But it's game one on the road in a pretty hostile environment, so it's a bit forgivable. That being said, I think the biggest reason that they're going to beat Texas A&M is they're going to play like a desperate team. And obviously the word desperate isn't necessarily positive, but in sports, sometimes desperation is a good thing, and you cannot fake desperation. And a lot of times when good teams are in desperate situations, when they have no choice but to win, they elevate their game. They become more focused, they play with more aggression, and you see it all the time in the MLB or the NBA. Like if a team goes down 2-1 or 3-1 in a best-of-7 series, usually the team who is down comes out with much more fire in the next game because they have no choice but to leave it all out there. Desperation can serve as a really powerful motivational force because it pushes people to train harder and focus more intensely. The problem is, if you're desperate for a long enough time, it can become detrimental because, you get a lot more anxious and you can be prone to more mistakes if you're playing with reckless abandon for a longer period of time. But in this case, I think Notre Dame is going to play with a much more heightened sense of urgency against Texas A&M because they just cannot afford to start the season off 0-2. Plus, they're in front of their home crowd who understands the magnitude of this moment. They're going to be pushing them forward. And I think they're going to feed off the crowd's energy. And if A&M loses, it's not nearly as big of a deal for them. They're still going to be ranked. Everything is still in front of them. Like, they could still win the SEC. They could still make the college football playoff. Like, this isn't even a conference game for them. So it's an important game for them for sure. Mike Elko hasn't won a road game against a ranked team in a really long time. And Texas A&M hasn't done it as a program since 2019, I believe. So don't get me wrong. They really want to win this game, but it's a much bigger deal for Notre Dame to win this game than it is for Texas A&M because they're already 2-0. And as for the part about this team reaching their full potential, Look, I understand that Marcus Freeman says it a lot. That has more to do with the process and Marcus Freeman's focus on process as opposed to outcomes, because in football, you have to be more focused on the process than the outcome. And if you do that, it's going to lead to positive outcomes. But because in order to achieve success on Saturday in the game of football, you have to be very focused. You have to have great attention to detail. You have to practice really hard during the week. You have to be very intent in the film room and all that stuff. And if you do all of those things correctly and with great intensity, you're going to win on Saturdays. That's what Nick Saban talked about all the time. That's why he's the greatest football coach, or certainly the best college football coach ever, because he was so focused on the process. And the saying, we just want to reach our full potential, is about focusing on the process to the point where they can reach their full potential. And if they do that, they're going to win a lot of games. And Marcus Freeman has a lot of sayings like that, like team glory, elevate, all that stuff. It's how he communicates his message, and it clearly resonates with the players because they'll repeat it unprompted. And if it was just going over all their heads, they wouldn't even bring it up. So I think this team is going to have a very, very good start to the game. And if they do, they should go on to win this one. Okay, Fox Connor says Mike Elko was asked in his press conference about Jeremiyah Love's limited touches against Miami, and he said he expects Love to carry the ball much more this week. How do you think Texas A&M will adjust their game plan? Will they start with defensive backs scouting the line of scrimmage like Miami did late in the game, or will Elko anticipate that Notre Dame will adjust and change things up? I mean, my guess is that Texas A&M is going to crowd the line of scrimmage until C.J. Carr proves he can hit them over the top, which I think he will do eventually. But Miami was bringing all their DBs up because Notre Dame was just throwing the ball horizontally. But then they hit Malachi Fields for a deep ball, and then they hit Eli Raridon for a huge game that set up the game-tying touchdown. Notre Dame needs to do that earlier in the game, but in order to hit those deep shots, they need to make Texas A&M respect the run, and Miami just didn't really respect the run game for Notre Dame because they weren't having a ton of success. They weren't really choosing to run the ball a whole lot. But I don't think that Texas A&M is going to change their approach to Jeremiyah Love at all based on the Miami game, because no defensive coordinator is going to look at someone who is that talented and that dangerous and decide to not account for him on every snap just because Notre Dame didn't give him the ball as much as they expected in week one. Jeremiyah Love can turn any given play into a touchdown. He only got 10 carries last week. He could have had 2 touchdowns because he's just that good. So even though Notre Dame did not give him the ball enough against Miami, Texas A&M is absolutely going to structure their defense around stopping him. And Love is so good that sometimes it doesn't matter if you try to stop it. For example, on the last drive of the game last year, not the last offensive drive for Notre Dame, but the one that set up the go-ahead touchdown, Notre Dame had to go 85 yards, and they wanted to milk the clock on their way to doing so, and that's exactly what they did. They drove 85 yards down the field to score the go-ahead touchdown. 56 of those 85 yards came on the ground, and Texas A&M knew they were running the ball, and it didn't matter because Jeremiyah Love was that good. The offensive line was winning at the point of the attack, and Notre Dame ended up winning that game 23-13. So even though Texas A&M is going to go out there and try to stop the run, Love is so good that they need to feed him the ball until that Texas A&M proves that they can stop him. Okay, Colton Fisher asks, is Mike Denbrock overwhelmed with the talent he has, and is he overthinking the offense? It seems like Love, Price, Greathouse, and Fields should all have double-digit touches or targets every big game. Okay, so I understand the premise here, right? In theory, Notre Dame is much more talented on offense than they were last year with Mike Denbrock as the offensive coordinator. The game plan was pretty simple. They were going to run the ball with Riley Leonard and Jeremiyah Love. They're going to wear teams down. But now that Notre Dame has more talent on the outside and they have 2 of the best running backs in the country, they need to spread the wealth out. But no, Mike Denbrock is he's not overwhelmed by the amount of talent that Notre Dame has, because this is not even close to the most talented offense that Mike Denbrock has had. In 2023 at LSU, Mike Denbrock had Jane Daniels at quarterback, who ended up winning the Heisman Trophy. He also had 2 of the best wide receivers in college football, Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas Jr., and they got the ball plenty. Malik Nabers had 89 receptions for over 1,500 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns. And wide receiver 2, Brian Thomas Jr., had 68 receptions for just over 1,100 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns. Not to mention his 3rd wide receiver, Kyron Lacey, was also very good. He had over 500 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns, and they had a really good young tight end in Mason Taylor. So no, Denbrock is not overwhelmed by having Malachi Fields and Jane Greathouse and Jordan Faison, Eli Raridon, Jeremiyah Love, and Jadarian Price. This group on Notre Dame is a talented bunch, but it's not anywhere close to that LSU team. But I understand what you're saying, and I agree that Jeremiyah Love should get more carries. Jadarian Price should get more carries. And I would like to see Jaden Greathouse be more involved in the game plan. Same with Will Pauling. And Malachi Fields should probably get some more deep threats or deep shots as well. But part of that is on the defense for not getting off the field, which you mentioned. And also, you got to have longer drives on offense. Like, you want to give the ball to Malachi Fields double-digit times. Well, Malachi Fields can't fumble the ball on the first play of a drive, which is exactly what he did against Miami. They need to win on early downs. Notre Dame was not doing that against Miami, and they only ran 58 total plays in that game. When Mike Denbrock was at LSU, they were averaging close to 70. And that is, it might not seem like a whole lot, just 12 more plays in one game. Trust me, it's a lot more. And then you multiply that over the course of a whole season. Now, all of a sudden, you have way more plays and you get the ball to all your different weapons on offense. So Notre Dame needs to win on early downs, which sets up longer drives, and then more guys can touch the ball. It is a combination of a bunch of things, but not a result of too much talent. It's a result of not winning on early downs and just not having that much success on offense or on defense, because Miami was dominating the time of possession. But I think in this game, you're going to see Notre Dame try to target their real playmakers early on, especially guys like Jeremiyah Love and Jaden Greathouse. Get them the ball, move the sticks, and I think you're going to see a much better offense going forward. All right, that's the big picture stuff about Texas A&M. Now let's drill down on the roster and schematics, because the right tweaks could be the difference between a win and another long weekend. That's next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is CJ Carr's no-look touchdown pass to Micah Gilbert. Even though Notre Dame ended up coming up short against the Miami Hurricanes in the season opener, the Irish fought their way back from a 14-point deficit. CJ Carr showed flashes of brilliance, like when he escaped the pressure and threw a no-look touchdown pass to Micah Gilbert. He also took it himself on a quarterback draw to tie the game in the fourth quarter. It wasn't the result that we were all hoping for, but there are plenty of reasons to be excited about the future. That's what keeps fans and players alike moving forward, always chasing the next great moment. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda. Move and be moved. All right, next up, at R2 Saint 24 asks, should Notre Dame experiment with sliding Bryce Young inside on the D-line for more versatility and a better pass rush? I think this is a good idea on obvious passing situations, because Bryce Young is one of the team's best pass rushers, and he's big enough to hold up inside. It also allows you to bring in your linebackers off the edge, guys like Jalen Sneed or someone like Kingston Bialiamo-Asa, who we've already seen are really good at getting after the quarterback when they come off the edge. But I did notice that in that game against Miami, in the occasions when Notre Dame would slide the defensive line before the snap, especially on early downs, Bryce Young would get pushed back on double teams because he was a little bit overmatched going up against the interior offensive lineman for Miami. And you got to give them credit. They're big dudes. They're really good. They're really physical. And Bryce Young isn't really used to being double teamed in the interior of the line. He's used to being on the outside where he can kind of make moves on a tackle like that. He has a little bit more space on the outside. So I think it's something that they can experiment with, but I don't think that they should move him inside full time. I was also kind of disappointed in Young's performance overall against Miami. Not that he played bad, it's just that I have such high expectations for him. So I just think he's best suited to play on the outside, grow into that role, and I think he could be an absolute game wrecker on the outside opposite Boubacar Traore, who looked really, really good in his first game back from injury. You got to imagine that now that he's had that game, now he has that game under his belt, his first game back, he's just going to keep ascending and become a really dominant force on the edges. And I'm hopeful that Jared Dawson can build off his performance in week one, because he was definitely the best interior defensive lineman that Notre Dame had. Jason Onye was fine, I would say, for the most part. And look, we all know Heinisch was terrible in that game against Miami. He was getting pushed around, but I think he's going to bounce back as well. He's been taking a lot of heat these past couple weeks. I get it. I think Jared Dawson should start over him, but I'm not ready to just bench Heinisch or anything like that, because he is a good player. He's a captain for a reason. The players voted him captain. It's not because he's a bum or anything like that. No, he's a good player. who's come up big for this team in different moments, and he's a good pass rusher as well. And I think that he just was overmatched against Miami's offensive line. It happens. He's going to have another big test going up against Texas A&M, but I think he's going to be up for it. Look, this is the same guy who had the game-clinching sack against Georgia in the college football playoffs. So he's a good player. He's a little bit undersized. Sometimes he's going to get pushed back, but I'm expecting big things from him as well. And I understand that Marcus Freeman wants to get pressure with 4, but if you can't do that, they can still generate pressure by mixing up the looks, bringing in different sub packages, moving Bryce Young to the inside, and then, just trying to confuse Marcel Reed in this offense. I think they have a lot of talent on this defense despite the performance in week 1, and he's going to get creative in this game. I think Chris Ash is going to be a little bit more aggressive in this one. Al Washington might rotate guys a little bit differently, like early on in the game. I didn't like that Boubacar Traore was not in there on some third downs. It was great to see Jordan Botelho back from injury, but Boubacar Traore should be in there on every single obvious passing down. And I think you could say the same thing about Bryce Young. So I like the idea, R2 Saint 24. I just think that they should use it in specific situations as opposed to moving him inside full time. All right. At McBride7 wonders, is the rotating right guard spot affecting Emil Wagner's performance at right tackle? This is a really good question, and one that I'm not sure that we can know the answer to after just one game. Most of Emil Wagner's issues against Miami were in pass protection when he was pretty much just one-on-one with Miami's very talented edge rushers, Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Messidor. He held up all right in the run game, I would say, but Notre Dame did not run duo nearly as much as we're accustomed to, which is where rotating guards could hurt you. And for those unfamiliar, duo is a run concept that places an emphasis on double teams with your offensive linemen. So in theory, that is when the right guard and the right tackle would be working in tandem. So if they're not on the same page, which could be a result of the rotation of right guard, then it might not work, which is kind of what McBride is referencing here. But Notre Dame just didn't run it enough for me to say, okay, that's the issue. That's why Emil Wagner was struggling. Like all the clips that were going viral on Twitter, it was when Notre Dame was clearly passing the ball, especially on the last drive of the game when they were trying to drive down the field and score after Miami kicked the go-ahead field goal with just over a minute left, and he just had no chance. He was going up against Ruben Bain Jr., who could just pin his ears back. And clearly, Emil Wagner was not fully healthy, or he was physically compromised, or he was dealing with cramps or something in that moment, because his technique just went way out the window. And we already know that Anthony Knapp was cramping up. He couldn't even get out there on the field. So I think Emil Wagner just kind of looked at it like he had no other option but to try to suck it up. And it just didn't work for him in that moment. But Notre Dame ran duo a lot, especially when Tommy Rees was there. Like he has that famous line, when Notre Dame was just pummeling Clemson back in 2022 when they upset them at home. And Tommy Rees was just so excited that he left the press box to come down to the sideline and be with the rest of the team as they were running out the clock. And he told Jared Parker, who was the tight ends coach at the time, that if they have to call an offensive play and he's not down on the field yet to call it, he said, just run duo, because that is what they had been running all game, and they were just running the ball down Clemson's throat. So that has been a staple of the Notre Dame offense for years. They kind of got away from it in this game because they were running so much RPO, but I do expect them to get back to it. And if Emil Wagner is not as effective in the run blocking game when they're running duo, then yeah, there might be a situation where the rotation at right guard could be affecting him, but I also don't think they're going to rotate as much at right guard in this game. I think we're going to see a lot more Gerby Lambert, and then Sullivan Absher is going to be like that Swiss Army knife that can rotate at, or not even rotate, but can sub at any of the other positions on the offensive line, because Notre Dame cannot be in another situation this season where Styles Prescott is asked to come off the bench and play in a serious moment. He's just not ready, and that showed against Miami. But I'm confident Emil Wagner is going to bounce back. All right, at Big Nate 027 says, if you could add one player from last year's team to this roster, who would you choose and why? I think most people would probably pick Howard Cross or Riley Mills because it fills a greater need right now, right? Like the biggest question on Notre Dame's defense going into the season was defensive tackle, and after one game, I don't think any of those questions were really answered. And Howard Cross and Riley Mills were really good college football players. We kind of forget just how good a healthy Howard Cross could be, because he was not healthy really at any point last season, which was really unfortunate for him. But then he made the team with the Bengals. He made their 53-man roster because he is that good of a player. And we saw that in 2023 when there were some games where he was just unblockable, like when Notre Dame played Duke and he was in on pretty much every single play. And everyone around the country was like, oh my God, who is 53 on Notre Dame? Notre Dame didn't really get to experience that in his last season, but still, he's a very, very good player. Same with Riley Mills. Different players. Riley Mills a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit better at getting after the quarterback, but I'm actually not going to take either one of those guys. I'm going to take Xavier Watts, especially after Watts' performance in his rookie debut for the Falcons. He finished with 6 tackles, which is third on the team. He also had 2 pass breakups in his first start against a good Buccaneers offense. Like, that was a really fun game to watch between the Falcons and the Buccaneers. And Xavier Watts was all over the field. And I understand that the secondary is a strength overall in this team, but Xavier Watts is so gifted that he makes everyone else around him better. Like, not only is he a playmaker, not only does he have a knack for the ball where he's, picking off passes or forcing fumbles or recovering fumbles. Like, we already know he's a ball hawk, but he made everyone else around him better because he was like a coach on the field. He was a problem solver, and he could figure out what offenses were trying to do, and then he could make sure that every one of his teammates were lined up correctly before the snap. And I think that ability probably eliminated so many potential explosive plays from the other team because Xavier Watts was able to prevent it before they even had a chance to make it happen or even try it. And last week, it felt like Notre Dame was a little bit out of sorts on defense in some plays, especially when Miami would speed things up. Guys weren't set. Guys weren't in position. There was one play where Drake Bowen was literally turned around talking to the secondary. So I think communication was a little bit of an issue. Part of that has to do with the fact that it's Chris Ash's first game as a defensive coordinator. But Xavier Watts is so good. Even if he's not filling a position of need, I just think he is that much of a difference maker on defense, and he would improve everyone else around him. Like, I would just feel so much more confident about the direction of the defense going forward if they had Xavier Watts in the back end leading the way. All right, we have broken down the X's and O's. Now let's wrap it up with some conversation about the stadium atmosphere, AP poll drama, and some stadium beer talk because Notre Dame is going to sell alcohol for the general public for the first time. That's all coming up next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is sponsored by Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where Drip Drop comes in. Drip Drop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. I've tried a lot of electrolyte powders, but nothing tastes as good or works as fast as Drip Drop. Drip Drop has become my go-to, especially during long summer days or when I wake up feeling dehydrated. It's also great to have before or after a workout. That way you can push yourself while staying hydrated. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Notre Dame, CJ Carr delivered in a big way during the fourth quarter. We all remember his no-look touchdown pass to Micah Gilbert for his first career touchdown pass, but how about the way he stayed cool, calm, and collected when the Irish went down 14 points? When the pressure was on, Carr came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like CJ Carr delivered for Notre Dame, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. All right, this next question comes from Dylan Volanth. This is Dylan's first time in the mailbag. He must have a lot more time on his hands now that he is a father. Him and his wife, Maggie, just welcomed their newborn son, Owen Volanth. And I'm telling you right now, remember the name. Owen Volanth, going to be a Notre Dame quarterback recruit circa 2043, I think. So yeah, remember the name, folks. But Dylan wants to know, with all the AP poll voter controversy circulating on Twitter over some egregious rankings, do you think there could be a significant push to eliminate the AP poll or reduce its importance? He says, I know it technically doesn't factor into the CFP, but it still creates bias and narratives based on preseason perceptions in some questionable ballots. He uses the term hacks. We're going to call them hacks. But let me explain the context of this question for anyone who doesn't understand the reference here. So, a writer from the SoCal News Group, who covers the USC Trojans. I mean, the jokes just write themselves here, but I'm not going to do it. Not even going to say her name. She was one of 62 sports writers / broadcasters from across the nation who has a vote in the AP poll. Well, she moved Florida up 2 spots from 16th to 14th in her Week 2 ballot, despite the fact that the Florida Gators lost at home to South Florida in a game in which they were favored by 17 points. And now, every writer's ballot is publicized, and not surprisingly, she started to catch a ton of heat once people noticed her obvious mistake. But then she made matters far worse by recording a video that I think was meant to be an apology and a way to sort of laugh it off, but it made matters so much worse because she tried to say like it didn't actually matter, like her vote really didn't mean all that much because, you know, it would all kind of average out, which is true in theory, but when you're saying that you have a vote in this poll that a lot of people take really seriously and you're one of only 62 people in the country, and there are a lot of people who cover this sport on a daily basis, and you are one of them who has a vote that does actually matter, and you're just like, yeah, I don't really care about it, like that's not going to land well, and sure enough, it did not. She made a really dumb mistake in not watching the game, not paying attention, and then her apology just sort of poured gasoline on the fire. She clearly didn't know the game, or she didn't watch the game, didn't know the result, and I think that's inexcusable for someone with a ballot on the AP poll. To me, the reaction online did get a little bit over the top. I think she was getting like death threats and stuff like that. So, of course, you know, Twitter is a cesspool. All that stuff is real, but I guess that's what we should come to expect on social media these days. But as for the question, like, I don't think you'll see a significant push to just eliminate the AP poll because, let's be honest, we need some ranking to justify how we feel and debate it, right? Like the coaches poll is a complete joke. We all know that. None of the coaches even cast their own vote. They just leave it to the sports information director, the SID, or someone else in the athletic department. They fill it out for them because they are focused on their own individual game. Like the fact that the coaches poll was actually one of the things that mattered in the BCS rankings back in the day is still so crazy to me. But with the AP, there is some level of implied credibility, even though we can all recognize its flaws because it's been around for a long time. There's a lot of writers, so you know, it does kind of accurately represent how most people would rank these teams. But for as much as we trash these rankings, we kind of need them, right? Like this game against Texas A&M feels bigger because the Aggies are ranked 16th, even though we don't really have any idea if they're a top 20 team in the country. Like, would this game have the same juice if Texas A&M was not ranked? No. Same with the Miami game. That was a top 10 matchup, even though those rankings were based entirely on projection because it was the first game of the season. TV companies love it too because they can build up the ranked matchups and more people are drawn to it. And you might not even recognize it. It's just sort of an innate thing. You're like, oh, wow, Miami USF, that's a ranked matchup this weekend now. I'm probably more inclined to watch it, even though I'm going to be tailgating for this game and all that stuff, but I'm going to have more interest in it because they're ranked. So, yeah, we can all acknowledge the rankings are flawed. The people who actually vote on them probably don't know as much as they lead on. But in sports, and especially college football, we love lists, we love rankings, and I just don't see this one going away anytime soon. All right, this next question comes from Jeff Melsheimer. How about that? 2 of my former roommates getting in on the mailbag action. They get back-to-back questions. Jeff has a 2-part question. Let's start with the first one. I'm worried that this will be the most attended game by visitors in some time. Notre Dame is coming off a loss, which may decrease attendance from Irish fans, and the Aggs travel well. How do you think this will stack up versus past big home games with strong visitor attendance like Georgia 2017? Well, folks, Jeff is from Texas. I trust his sourcing on the Aggs traveling well, and I do expect a lot of Aggies to be in attendance for this one, just like there were a lot of Notre Dame fans in College Station last year. These two teams do not play very often. They both have rabid fan bases, and it is an opportunity for opposing fans to experience a new venue. Like, I love going to see Notre Dame play road games in cool environments, even though they lose pretty much every single time I go to them, except last year when Notre Dame won at Kyle Field. That was huge for me. My first big road win. Like, I went to Georgia 2019. That was a lot of fun. I've been to some other big road games, and I just haven't had a whole lot of luck. But I guess we're on a winning streak in that regard. But no, I'm not worried at all about this weekend being a repeat of Georgia in 2017 for a couple reasons. The main reason this is Notre Dame's first home game after a run to the national championship, and this is probably the most bought in the fan base has been in my entire life. Back in 2017, when Notre Dame played Georgia, that was the home opener, and it was the first home game after a 4-8 season in 2016 when, honestly, a large portion of the fan base wanted the head coach fired, and this is the marquee home game on the schedule this year. After a pretty weak home slate last year, I guess Notre Dame fans kind of got saved because the Indiana home playoff game was awesome and everyone seemed to be in town for that game. So we did have one big home game last year, but fans want to go to this game. Like, this is the one. Yes, Notre Dame plays USC at home later in the year at night. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. But who knows if USC, like what they're going to be like in the middle of October. But fans want to go to this game. It's an SEC team. They're 2-0 right now. Unlike 2017, when I think a lot of fans sold their ticket as a form of protest because Notre Dame brought back Brian Kelly after that 4-8 debacle in 2016. But man, that Georgia game was something different. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see anything like that again. I hope we don't. I remember on Wednesday of that week, like that was my senior year and Jeff's senior year as well. And I remember walking around campus and I saw Georgia fans, like a lot of them on campus on Wednesday. It was like, how are you already here? And that's when I knew that that game was going to be different. Like, normally you start to feel the buzz on campus for a big home game around Thursday. That's when more people start to trickle in. They're walking around campus. You know, there's a different energy. There's a different vibe going on. And then that really kind of comes to a fever pitch by like Friday afternoon. But there were so many Georgia fans on Thursday when I was trying to get to class. I was like, this is not going to be good for Notre Dame. But I think that was their first time ever playing a game north of the Mason-Dixon. So it was a huge deal. Obviously, every self-respected college football fan wants to go to a game in Notre Dame Stadium because it's like the mecca of college football, all the history, all the tradition. I get all that. But the program is in a much better place now today. The stadium atmosphere, the experience as a whole is a whole lot better than it was back in 2017. And fans want to be there to support this group. Aggie fans are going to find their way in the stadium for sure. But my guess is it would be more like the Ohio State game in 2023, where there was certainly some red in the crowd, but a lot more green during that green out, certainly more than Georgia back in 2017 or even Cincinnati in 2021. I cannot wait for the atmosphere on Saturday. And another thing that I cannot wait to do is buy a beer inside Notre Dame Stadium, because this is the first time that they're going to be selling alcohol to the general public like myself. They've been selling alcohol to the rich people and the pretty people seats for a few years now. But that leads me to my last two questions of the show. At Dan O'Carter asks, how much will serving alcohol at Notre Dame Stadium affect the environment, and how many games before Notre Dame might rethink it? And then the second part to Jeff's question, he says, do you have any predictions for what drunk encounter Luke Smith will complain about on next week's pod now that the Irish are serving beer in the stadium? What old, drunk, unruly fan will he have to deal with in the third quarter? That is such a good question. If you've been watching or listening to the show, you know that Luke Smith attracts the most bizarre fan interactions inside Notre Dame Stadium than literally anyone else in the world. I simply cannot wait to hear about what he deals with on Saturday. Hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully Notre Dame is just dominating and everyone is just in a joyous mood. And even if they have a little bit too many, it doesn't matter because everyone's happy. But let's get back to the question about the environment. To be honest with you, I don't think it's going to affect the environment much at all, to be honest, because like most people are drinking before the game anyway. It's not like fans weren't drinking before the game. And I've actually made the point before that I think fans are going to be less drunk when they enter this game than before, because back before Notre Dame sold alcohol in the stadium, fans, and especially the younger ones, would just chug as much booze as they possibly could before going in the gate. So then they'd walk into the stadium blitzed because they knew that they couldn't buy any more alcohol in the stadium. And Notre Dame is definitely not going to rethink alcohol sales because they're about to make way more money at the concession stand than they have ever before now that they can sell alcohol. And yeah, the university, like they've got their morals and all that stuff, but they do like their money and they're about to make a lot more of it. So they're not going to rethink it. And I honestly just don't think you're going to see a significant shift in like the rowdiness of the atmosphere. I'm just most curious to see what the operation is going to be like inside the stadium. Like, are they ready for the long lines? Will they run out of beer? This is their first time doing it, and I have a feeling they're not going to be clicking on all cylinders coming out of the gate. So I could see there being a situation where the lines are really long, where people don't even want to wait But maybe I'm just being a little bit pessimistic. Maybe they're just ready to go and the beers are going to be flowing and the stadium is a super raucous atmosphere. But it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I just cannot wait for this game on Saturday. But I will give my one prediction for Luke. My early prediction is that he's going to encounter at least two old men who have had a few too many. They're not completely dialed into what's going on in the field. They'll probably say some dumb stuff like they need to bench Carr after he throws an incomplete pass or fire Marcus Freeman because Notre Dame is only up by one touchdown. Like, this might sound ridiculous, but I'm promising you that Luke Smith has dealt with a lot more absurd interactions in the stadium, and I'm sure we're going to hear all about it when he's on the show next Tuesday for our final thoughts. But that is going to do it for today's Friday Mailbag. Huge thanks to everyone who sent in their questions. You guys honestly make this show what it is. And of course, thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you have not already, please subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Like the video, leave a rating or review. I know I ask about it every single time on every single episode, but it really helps this show reach even more Notre Dame fans, and it has grown a lot as we have gotten ready for this season, and I really do appreciate all of the support. I'm going to be at the game on Saturday, so there is not going to be a live post-game show after that or an instant reaction video, but I am going to have a full recap and reaction for you Sunday afternoon once I get back to LA, so be on the lookout for that. Until then, enjoy the game, stay loud in the stadium, and go Irish.